Hey everyone, Raphael here, founder of SplitBase. Today I'm super excited because we have on this video one of my favorite person ever, and this is Ry Schwartz. So Ryan is, in my opinion, one of the world's best copywriters. And when I say copywriters, don't confuse it with like somebody who writes blog posts. I'm talking about a sales copywriter, just someone who can write words that will make your audience and your customers buy your products, literally. And I did an interview with Ryan last year about drip email marketing, and it was so well received that I had to do another one. So this is part 2 a year later, and we'll really focus on copywriting, conversion optimization, and how all of that kind of fits into your e-commerce marketing and your e-commerce product descriptions, landing pages, and so on. So Ryan, man, how are you?
What's up, guys? Dude, I'm so happy to be here. For the audience here, really happy to meet you here as well. A little kind of behind the scenes note, Raph and I were just kind of talking earlier, and we realized that last interview that Raphael did actually ranks #1 in Google for my name. So like this follow-up is part of me trying to reclaim my own name on Google. So if this goes really, really well and you get a lot of value, just email Raphael, let him know, and say like set Ryan's Google ranking free, and we'll call it even. So awesome to be here, man.
Awesome. Glad to have you here too. So let's just establish some context. Mm-hmm. When it comes to e-commerce websites, you've got copy everywhere. So product descriptions, that's copy. Cart abandonment emails, that's copy. Your headlines, that's copy. Your landing pages, that's copy. Your Facebook ads, AdWords, that's all copy, right? Yet, here's what happens, and here's what I've been noticing, is that copy is an afterthought, right? So the people who's going to write the copy, the landing pages, the emails, is probably just going to be someone who does, everything related to marketing in the company. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll get a copywriter for the product descriptions, but then how do you know that's good copy? Is it really copy? Is it just a fact sheet of a product? Right? And all of that is super important. So I want to ask you, why do you think copy is still overlooked? People are paying tons and tons for graphic designers. They know they can't do the design themselves, so they're going to hire someone, at least companies that know what they're doing. But why is copy still something that people are kind of thinking later?
That's a great question, man. And I think like the reason it's the most overlooked and neglected thing is because it's the hardest to grasp. It has this perceived esotericness to it where like people just don't know if this is good or not. It's harder to track than certain design elements. It's harder to really kind of like just know the difference between what's effective and what's not. And of course, like it's hardest to do, especially if you're not a natural writer and you're still trying to quote unquote write copy. And that's the biggest thing I teach my students is, forget everything you think copywriting is or isn't. Copywriting isn't talking to your customer. Copywriting isn't even engaging in a conversation with your customer, as a lot of people think it is. Copy is catalyzing a conversation that happens in your prospect's head. That's what its function is there for. And I think when you just kind of drill it down to that and make that kind of the goal and the new definition of what copy is, people start to just kind of warm up about it. It's not this stringent thing that has to fit within these very tight formulas. And if you don't hit all those formulas and those 18 points, you feel like what you're doing is ineffective. The best conversion specialists in the world are sales enrollment specialists, who will close 50% in one-on-one conversations. They're like jewelry salespeople talking about e-commerce, where like, if they have the right prospect in front of them at the counter, chances are that person is going to leave with that watch or that ring or that whatever, and these people, what they're doing is they're holding that space for that customer to have that conversation in their head, and they're giving those prompts that really catalyze it.
That's really interesting. Now, let's say we have tons of product descriptions. You know, I'm an e-commerce store, and that's probably the most obvious place where we've got a lot of copy, and where, for example, I look at my clients, you know, 7 to 8 figure e-commerce stores, and they have copywriters on the team, but what they're mostly doing in their day-to-day is writing product descriptions. So now we've got product descriptions, emails, and so on. If I'm working at a company, I do digital marketing for an e-commerce store, how do I know if our copy is any good? Like, are there signs? You said it's hard to track, and I agree. As a conversion optimizer, you know, it's not like we can just track a button click. But how do I know if the copy on my e-commerce store is any good?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the first metric, I guess, would be if you actually test new copy versus the old copy, and it's a very kind of controlled variable situation, and like you just swap out those descriptions. So that would be kind of the first level. The second level, like if you have a sales team, if you have anybody who is front facing, let's say you are e-commerce, but you have some pop-up shops or whatever, or some actual physical locations, show that to your top performing salespeople, you know, involve them in that conversation. You know, they may not even know what a copywriter is, but they are literally performing that function in real time, live, you know, in front of a customer. You know, that is more valuable than even hiring someone like me to come in and consult with you for an hour and tell you what's going on. Like, listen to the people who are actually selling your thing. And the other thing I just kind of want to note about like product descriptions, like this is going to sound totally ridiculous, but like how to know if it's bad and, you know, needs optimization. I mean, what I ask, is this a product description or is this an outcome description? You know, like,
that's good.
You know, so like that's one frame I would put, especially if you want to do a quick little test on one product that is getting kind of a lot of traffic. Like, swap out that headline. Don't call it a product description. You could put it back in there after, but just for your own practice, write outcome description. What is it going to look like once they have that new pair of jeans on? You know, are they going to be getting compliments from that barista at Starbucks? You know, what is it like? What is the outcome of like wearing this watch? Like a product description might say like, I don't know, like a 2mm dial with sleek hands or whatever. Like, I didn't buy the watch for the sleek hands. I bought it so that, you know, I feel luxurious. I feel like a powerful executive who is putting this on and is ready to go to work, you know, and maybe I'm putting this on so the Uber driver next to me asks me, where did I get that watch? You know, like, be hyper specific about the outcome that the owner of this product is going to experience.
That's such a great point. And I love that you brought it up, because this is probably the biggest marketing mistake that people make across all industries, and also sales mistake, where instead of talking about the outcome, people talk about the features, right? So they often say emotion is twice as strong as the logic. And yet companies, especially in the product descriptions, are super focused. This is, you know, this is how the shoulders fit. This is how this item, I don't know, the dimensions and so on. And it's just a fact sheet, bullet points, or this is a blue shirt. Things that for the audience is like, okay, good to know, and possibly information that they need to know. But then they totally forget about the benefit, right? So how do you want to make them feel? What is the outcome? And that is exactly what you said. And I love it, because it's like software companies, when I work with them quite a bit, and we still work with them, but it's the same problem. People focus on features of the product and not the benefit. So people care not necessarily about the shirt they're going to buy, but they care about how that shirt is going to make them feel, how that watch is going to be perceived, and how, you know, the status. And so thank you so much for sharing. That's so important. Now, guys, I want to make sure that you know that Ryan has worked with some of the biggest names out there in terms of everything. His clients are people that are absolutely incredible. Amy Porterfield, Todd Herman, people you probably heard about. Ryan, I'd love for you to give us an example of, let's say, someone who's got an okay copy, and then you optimize that copy, and then the end result. Do you have like a great case study or something to share with us just share with us that shows and proves that copy does make an impact? Because it's all good. We're saying, oh, copy is as important as graphic design. Graphic design, it's easy. You see it. Oh, this is beautiful. This is not. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this isn't a full case study, but this is something that people could definitely kind of take a look at and see what the power of copy is. And we'll probably put the link somewhere, wherever this is published. But on Copy Hackers, Lance Jones actually wrote a post about a little campaign I worked on with him, and it's called, I think, The Power of a Polarizing Email. And this was kind of like a campaign that I helped them out with. It was for their 10X landing pages course, actually. And essentially, there was one email in the sequence. It was with I think 24 or 48 hours left until it closed. And, when I write copy, a lot of people have this saying, never be boring. I have this saying, never be benign. Don't be afraid of eliciting emotion, even if that emotion is anger. Anger is often a precursor for transformation. You look at any kind of therapist setting, and how many people lash out at their therapist, in those moments before they finally come into deep acceptance and transformation, right? So don't be afraid of a little bit of backlash or to push those triggers, because conflict sets things in motion. There's no bad reaction. So we had one email in that sequence, and I know that I'm onto something when I publish something or I share something with a client and I feel like, this might not land very well. You should be a little bit scared of your own work. That is not a bad thing. That's actually a sign you're onto something. And they sent it, and they got about quadruple the typical response rate they would usually an email. Poor Lance was kind of watching all the replies come in, and half of them were people saying, oh my God, this is amazing. This is exactly what I had to hear for the point to land. And half of them were totally repelled and angry and furious. And that anger is really just kind of a result of people getting very intimate with a pain, right? And it's a form of wanting to avoid and neglect and, dissociate from it. So that's how you kind of know you're doing it well. There's a whole write-up on that on Copy Hackers. And it was a really high-performing email there. It was hyper-polarizing, got a ton of replies, and it's something that people still kind of talk about today in that space. So that's kind of one case study of just kind of what happens when you take that leap. You aren't afraid to kind of speak to those emotions in a hyper-specific way. There's talking about pain and emotions, there's a big difference between talking about a stomach ache and talking about brutal indigestion that comes with gluten intolerance and you just ate at a Chinese buffet. You got to describe it so specifically that the people who are experiencing it feel like you're offering them an out, or the people who are experiencing it notice it and they're so disgusted by the own experience almost, and they don't want to talk about it and they get angry at you for bringing it up. So just never be benign and don't be afraid to kind of elicit that in your audience.
That's amazing. So take a leap and don't be afraid to really target your customers' emotions, how they feel, right? And this comes back also to, and we'll dive into it deeper real soon, but this comes back to the voice of customer, right? It's really about creating a relationship between your copy and that person. Right. So look at that, guys. A 4x increase in responses just because of a difference in copy. So imagine, take your product descriptions. Imagine if they would convert 4 times better because of the copy. The impact would be amazing, right? And it's something that I've seen myself where, in all of our projects, as conversion optimizers, we find the voice of customer, and then we get a copywriter when we want to optimize product descriptions or landing pages, and we test. And using exactly what you said, Ryan, we had a client last year where we increased their email conversions by 240%. Wow. Just because of using the voice of the customer, the emotions, and taking what they were telling us. So guys, if it's not part of your digital marketing efforts of really looking at the copy you're producing and putting out there, it has to be. You know, so many companies and even conversion agencies don't involve copywriters in their projects. And it's absolutely nuts because every single objection that your customers might have, you can counter it with copy, right? One of the biggest objections that I'll see with our clients, we work with a lot of e-commerce companies that sell higher end products. So products that are, you know, a little higher priced than most equivalent products. So we have to counter the objection of price, right? The price objection. And every time we get that objection, I often say, it's not because the customers truly object to the price. It's because they don't feel the value. They don't see how it's going to benefit them. They don't see why they should pay for that. Because if you only have a feature list of your product, let's say you're selling like a body wash for $40 compared to, you know, if you go to the drugstore, you'll find, you know, body washes at $5, $8. So why should you pay for $8? If you just say the bottle has, you know, this many ounces of liquid in it, beautiful bottle, and then you only have the image, how do you expect people to understand why they should pay that $30, $40 for that body wash compared to the $8, right? So, so important. So guys, make sure any A/B test that you're doing involve copywriters. Any type of optimization involve copywriters. Now, you were talking about the voice of customer, connecting with your audience.
Right.
And to me, that's really about getting into the customer's minds. And it might seem like a bit mystical for people. How do you really, you know, how do you understand the emotion? So how do you do that? How do you really dive into their psychology, understand how they're feeling for a certain product? And then how are you able then to take that and write copy that really resonates with them?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, man. So I was asked to kind of give a workshop on this in Sonoma last year, and it is a bit of a mystical process until you really break it down and see how simple it really is. Yeah. I mean, the first one is forget yourself. Forget that you are director of marketing or director of CRO or copywriter or whatever you are. Like, become absent, you know, and this is easier if you are, you know, a Zen practitioner. But essentially take yourself out of that equation. So that's the first thing. I once said that I don't write until I feel like shit, until I'm so desperate to solve the problems or engineer the outcomes of that audience, you know, that I'm writing with like so much fury and emotion because I want to solve this problem for myself. Yeah. So one quick exercise that we're going to make this super practical. And I did this on the spot with somebody who was, I think, the director of marketing for a hair loss clinic, right? And like, I think they had solutions for that, you know, between kind of like surgeries and different kind of solutions. And he was really trying to connect with obviously that audience to write better email copy. And what I led him through is this exercise I call the moment of highest tension. And I want everybody to kind of do this with their own thing, you know, like what is that hyper specific contextual, like 3-dimensional moment of time where your prospect will suffer the consequences of not having your product, you know? So in this case, just to walk you through the hair loss example, you know, that did start on a surface level asking about the demographics, like who is this person you're talking to? Because that moment of highest tension is going to be much different for a 22-year-old single male than it would be for a 50-year-old dad who just doesn't care if he's balding. So we get hyper specific. So first you take all that kind of demographic data. It's great you have it. And then where does he actually experience, you know, that pain, that moment of highest tension? You know, it's probably not while he's working and in flow. It's probably not when he's asleep, because contrary to like the cliche, nothing actually keeps your prospect up at night except for, you know, overeating at a Chinese buffet once again. So never use that language. Nothing actually keeps them up at night. Sleep apnea is like totally a different medical condition. But where does he actually experience it? And kind of, I allowed him to walk, like the director of marketing, to walk through the day of that prospect. And I'm like, what did your prospect do today? And it happened to be a Friday, and he's like, he went to work, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what is he doing tonight? And he's like, well, I think he's probably going to go out to the bar with, his friends. And I'm like, what's he wearing? And he's like, I don't know, I guess like jeans, a flannel shirt, and, a flat rim ball cap. I'm like, flat rim ball cap. All right, cool. What's he doing as soon as he gets to the bar? And he's like, well, I mean, I guess they're going to take a table. They're going to order some drinks. And I'm like, all right, fast forward half an hour later. What's he now doing? And he's like, well, I guess he's had a few drinks and they're wanting to mingle and meet some people. I'm like, what kind of people? He's like, women. And I'm like, all right. So let's say he meets this girl, amazing eyes, really forming this connection. Tell me about that conversation. And he's like, well, I mean, he's starting to feel a little bit insecure. He's not as confident as he should be in this conversation. And really, he's kind of like dreading and thinking in the back of his mind, like, what's going to happen when I have to take off my ball cap? And I'm like, great. So what happens 20 minutes later that could really ruin this guy's amazing night? And then he's like, holy crap, it's that moment where she says, I want to see what you look like without your hat. And she pulls it off without warning, and then all this stuff he built up, all this amazing experience he's had is wiped away in that one thing, so that is the moment of highest tension there. And you could do this for literally anything you're selling. If you're selling kind of like an expensive, $5,000 dress, like who are you selling that to? Is that kind of like a, an 40-year-old executive who has a lot of money and is going to a lot of these social gatherings, right? Why is she really wearing that dress? What is the emotional payoff there? And really drill down and use that, leverage that. And even if you don't use that specifically in your copy, which you should, just having that awareness and that experience of it is really going to connect you on that intimate level and allow you to write from that perspective. So that is like the first practical exercise I want to really give.
That's amazing. I love how you took the dress example because, as I was saying, a lot of our customers are higher end products where it's really important to make them feel. And when it comes to higher end products, it's incredibly important to focus on the emotions and the feeling, because that's why people buy these products. It's not just, they're not buying a dress because they need a dress. Okay, they might need one, but it's because there's a reason behind it. And and making that experience, it's buying that dress as an experience in itself for that person. And it's something, if you're selling in store, that's something that in store you can kind of create, right? And you can talk and you talk to the customer, you show them, it's got the environment matches the mood you want them to be in. But online, it's important to recreate something very similar. And it's a place where it's still weak for most companies. They don't recreate that. They just put the product there and expect to have the same level of success. It won't, because the customer is not feeling the emotions. They're not feeling how great they're going to be wearing that dress.
For sure.
You can make them feel, and it's with a technique, for example, what you said, that's how you can achieve it.
Yeah. And I mean, the flip side of that is what I call exclusive empowerment, and like we hear a lot about exclusivity, especially in the luxury markets. Robert Cialdini talked about it in his book, and it is this principle of persuasion. But to take that to another level, exclusive empowerment is, what is it? What points of pride do they have about things they've done, experienced, circumstance, status, all these things they've already done that they have so much pride about? How can they leverage that to buy your product? No one wants what other people could have the opportunity to get. They want what they have earned through the rights of what they've already done and created in their life. So if you could position your product as something that they alone have earned through their unique experiences and status and experiences, all that stuff, all of a sudden, they don't want to leave privilege points on the table, right? They want to be able to cash those in and reap the rewards of that investment. So that is another thing you want to really look at. What points of pride do they have that uniquely and exclusively empowers them to get your product?
That's amazing.
And go beyond money alone. Like just because someone makes $300,000 a year, yes, that is part of it, but go deeper. What have they really done? What have they experienced? What have they overcome in order to be exclusively empowered for it?
And everyone watching this, I want to make it clear that everything that Ryan's saying about, thinking about your customers, the real best way to know that is not by making it up. It's really by going out and talk to your customers. Call them. Don't be afraid. I actually wrote a huge post on this topic recently. I'll link it below or wherever I can link this. But run surveys, qualitative surveys to really get into the mind, see what words they're using, how they're describing. And surveys are great, but sometimes to get into the more interesting facets of a person, more personal questions, as Ryan was saying, you got to get on the phone. So pick up the phone after you get your survey responses. It's the best time. Usually you'll look at your survey responses, see what's best and what's most interesting. And then you can send that customer an email and say, hey, would you mind getting on the phone for maybe 15, 20 minutes? We'll give you a discount on your next purchase or something like that. Doesn't mean you have to give a discount, but what's in it for them? So, and get on the phone with them and ask them these questions. Ask them to walk you through their day and understand how they think, the context they're going through. And that's really going to give you that I guess profile of that customer.
This alone is going to be game changing. Like there is a reason why at the end of every podcast, I give my phone number. I literally spell it out. 1-514-947-4395. If you feel so compelled to call me and ask me questions on what I just spoke about, do it. I mean, I'm grateful that you're responding so well to what I have to say, and I could talk about this all day. I am not afraid of that conversation. I totally welcome it. And the other aspect there is, yes, we have all these very strategic mechanisms for collecting data and setting up interviews and stuff. And that is amazing. Complement that with those spontaneous conversations that are truly a gift.
So for you guys who are, sitting with your team or that are working in a team and everybody has a specific role in the company, make sure that this is one of my favorite techniques to just get on the phone quickly. Our mutual friend, Ryan and I, Dan Martell, has this technique called smile and dial. So every Thursday, he's just going to pick up the phone and call a random customer and ask a few questions like that. And some customers are not going to like it. They're going to hang up. That's fine. Then just don't call them again. But just the insights you'll get from calling people. So schedule in your calendar with your team. You should have a time, maybe every week. If it's not every week, at least once a month to relate with your customers again, to really, because it's easy in a team of, if you're a team of 20, 50 digital marketing people, it's easy to drive and act on assumptions on what we think the customer think, on what we think the copy or the product description should be, on what we think the landing page should look like. But you never truly know until you speak to the customer. So you're just losing time, and you can cut that time in half, or if not more, just by talking with your customers and getting the real answers. Stop guessing, go to the source.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So Ryan, we're nearing the end of our interview, but I want to ask, so let's say I'm an e-commerce manager or even a copywriter at a large e-commerce company. Doing all that process of talking to customers, sending surveys, discovering the voice of customer. My plate might be full. I might not have the time to do it now. I might have to convince the person I'm reporting to actually let me call the customers. But there are still other ways to optimize your copy, at least that you could get started with. So Ryan, do you have a method? Or I'm really not a believer in quick instant wins where all of a sudden you'll make $1 million more. So what is the minimum or the easiest way that somebody inside an e-commerce company can use to optimize their product descriptions or their landing pages without doing the whole thing now? Although I do recommend people, you should do the whole thing. But if you're looking for one thing to do maybe this afternoon or this morning, whenever you're watching this, Ryan, do you have one way for people listening to this to do that?
Yeah, so this is kind of like the non-negotiable that I think everybody should be able to do. It doesn't take long. 10, 20 minutes is all you really need. You could set a timer, and this works no matter what kind of copy you're writing. So sales pages, emails, product descriptions, pretty much anything, even social media posts. So like there's two main things I use. And the first one is actually called the so what sweep. And what I'm talking about here is that's how you identify, if you are talking, strictly in features that no one really cares about, or benefits and outcomes, that people are going to experience. So like anytime you read a sentence, ask yourself, so what? Like this watch has like gold dial trim. So what? So the dude in Uber notices it sparkling under the sunlight coming in the windshield and gives you kind of that like props, like nice watch, man. Like that is the so what. So the so what sweep, anytime you have a sentence that describes a feature, talk about it. Like even in what we do, we have copywriting trainings, right? And like, our 10x emails course last year, we had a lot of kind of like SaaS companies that were also buying it. And like, even saying like, this program is going to help you kind of sell more subscriptions, like even that, so what? You could go even one level deeper so that you can, hire a CTO without having to like promise him worthless equity that he doesn't even care about, in that hyper specific way. Yeah. So the so what, and that actually blends into the second one, which is the specificity suite. Anytime you think you might be talking in generalities or vagueness or something that is just a placeholder for something deeper, be more specific. Pain is a placeholder for the moment of highest tension that we described earlier. Like the guy who's losing his hair, his pain isn't the fact that he's losing hair. His pain is the fact that he's having this conversation with a girl and she wants to take his hat off and he feels that's going to blow his chances. So specificity around everything, that is how you raise the stakes. It's in being more specific about everything you're talking about, specific about the outcome, specific about the pains, specific about, what they've already done to try to achieve that. Like when I'm selling copywriting trainings, I'm being hyper specific about what their current way of hiring copywriters is, like browsing for 3 hours profiles on Upwork and still not having any clue who's more qualified than the other, and then making an investment you don't feel super confident in and getting copy back that you don't even feel confident publishing. Like hyper specificity about process, experience, benefits, outcomes. Specificity is like the quickest way to improve anything, because that is what elicits that, oh my God, they totally get me moment. And that's the connection you're trying to achieve in anything you do, that, oh my God, he or she gets me moment. Specificity is the only way to do it because people live very specific lives. Yeah. I don't live a general life. Like your customers relate to things specifically, and it's your job to really dial that in.
That's amazing. This is gold. Everybody who's listening to this, if you are not applying those two strategies, those two swipes, as Ryan calls it, ASAP, like probably today, you are missing out on a lot of money. Just go through, maybe not if you have hundreds of products or thousands, you don't need to go through all of them, but at least like start getting a feeling of how a more specific and outcome-driven product description would look like. Really try to imagine how you can write your product descriptions in the future. This is pure money. That is amazing. Now, Ryan, I'd love for you to share, as we're ending this interview, what are the 3 takeaways that you want people watching this to remember?
Yeah. So, the first one is really kind of those 2 sweeps I outlined. Do those, no excuses not to do them. The second one would be, I hear a lot of people have resistance around being specific. Like, what if that doesn't speak exactly to what my customer experience is? Like if I'm talking about selling, a watch, and I'm talking about how that's going to look really good as their hand digs into the pocket of their Levi's 501 black skinny jeans. Like someone might say, like, I don't know, my customer wears that. But like, here's the thing. It doesn't have to have an identical match to what they actually wear. It has to have an identical match to a reality they could observe and place themselves into.
Something they can relate to, at least.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to take those swings to be more specific and the so what. You know, like when I talk about how copy or CRO is going to help you bring in more revenue, I don't talk about like you're going to make more money. I say, you know, your SAM card or PayPal notifications are going to show up and load up on your iPhone home screen. Like even if you don't have an iPhone and you have an Android, you can relate to that experience and it lands emotionally.
Yeah.
You know, the reason we feel emotions when we watch any movie, you know, like I've never been to jail, but I've never served a 20-year life sentence for something I didn't do. But yet I really loved Shawshank Redemption. You know, I still had that emotional journey because everything was shown super specifically. So that's the second takeaway. Don't be afraid to take those swings on both those sweeps I spoke about. Number 3, it's kind of what we spoke about earlier, you know, and what copywriting is or isn't. So copywriting isn't talking at your customer, you know, and copywriting isn't even engaging them in a conversation. Copywriting is catalyzing a conversation they're going to have with themselves, you know, so just kind of anchoring into that, reading your copy and saying, as a customer, if I'm reading this, what is the immediate self-talk or conversation I'm going to start having? You know, and ultimately it has to be one where they see themselves and can future pace themselves with your product. You know? Yeah.
Awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much for sharing. And guys, so I think Ryan shared his takeaways. I agree with all of them. And I'll share with you one takeaway where, and it's as simple as make sure you value copywriting in your next A/B test, in your next conversion optimization effort. Every single time that you try to improve the website, think that copywriting is probably more effective than the design, right? So it has to be thought of all the time. And if you're working with a marketing agency or even a conversion optimization agency, and they don't have a copywriter working on your projects when copy is needed, so just some random person who's going to write the copy, like, don't do it. Like, bad copy can also hurt your sales really bad. So make sure you do have, you value copy inside your company for your ads, for your landing pages, and obviously, of course, product descriptions. Make people feel the way they should be feeling when they're buying your items. Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. This is gold. So Ryan, if people want to learn more about you or want to learn from you, how can they do that? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we already left an Easter egg in this video where I dropped my number somewhere. So I'm not going to repeat it again. If someone really, really wants to have that conversation, find it in this video. Dial me up. You know, more practically, if you don't want to have a one-on-one conversation, I should have a website up, you know, depending on when you see this. So don't hate me if it's still kind of in development, but it would be ryschwartz.me. So that's RYSCHWARTZ.me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time. It was an awesome time. So thank you. Hope you guys all learned a lot from Ryan. I sure did, even though I've known Ryan for a few years now. Thank you, Ryan, for your time. People, if you have any questions, you can send an email to either Ryan through his website or to me, Raphael at SplitBase.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out and sort through your challenges. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me. Cheers.